Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed U.S. President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963. Or did he? The doubt that lingers about that event is in part born of one of the biggest conspiracy theories of the 20th century. And it's the staying power of such, dare we say, fake news that's fascinating and explored in Fred Litwin's new book. It's called I Was a Teenage JFK Conspiracy Freak. And he's here now to explore all of that with us. Fred, good to have you back on the program.
Great to be here, thank you.
I want to just take you back because you were what, a kid of 7 when this happened?
Yeah, 7 years old.
What do you remember about that day?
I remember it was a Friday, just getting off of school early. I think we were told about it, getting off school slightly early, walking home and feeling really horrible about what had happened.
So they announced it in school and sent everybody home?
That's what I think, that's what I remember, but I can't be certain, this is one of those memories where I'm not sure. But
yeah. Well, you were 7, so it's not surprising you might not remember it. At what point then, over the years, did you sort of become the self-described teenage JFK conspiracy freak?
It was March 1975. It was a Thursday night. I was home alone watching TV, and it was Geraldo Rivera's show, Good Night America, and he had the first national airtime showing of the Zapruder film. And it showed Kennedy's head.
Yeah, tell everybody what the Zapruder film was.
So it's the best film of the assassination, shot by Dallas dressmaker Abraham Zapruder. He was standing on a pedestal just opposite Elm Street, and he shot the best film.
Home video.
Home video, and it had never been shown on national TV because Life magazine owned the rights. And there it was. So I was sitting at home watching it, and it showed Kennedy's head going back after the fatal shot.
Back and to the left.
Back and to the left, which seemed to indicate that the shot came from the front, despite the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was in behind Kennedy.
Now, when Geraldo Rivera did that show, what was the conclusion that he came to on that program?
Well, he was very clear with his guess that the shot came from the front. All the shots came from the front, and they also went into some of the other testimony. But it was very unsettling. The whole studio audience gasped when they saw the headshot. And I knew as soon as it was over, I've got to find out more about this.
Did you buy into the conspiracy, having watched that show?
Well, I was intrigued. Yeah, it seemed pretty clear that the shot came from the front, and so I immediately headed off to the library to find more information.
And what'd you do?
So I got Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment, which was one of the big books in the mid-1960s, sold over 1 million copies. And one thing that hit me in that book was he said that Kennedy's autopsy x-rays and photographs were confiscated after the autopsy by federal agents. That was interesting. So what happened? Well, that book was written in 1966. It was now 1975. So I went back to the periodical subject indexes in the library, looked up old Time and Newsweek articles, and found out that the Kennedy family had the autopsy photographs and x-rays, and that in 1972, 2 private doctors had examined them, and they both came to the same conclusion, that the shots came from behind.
Which is the official version.
The official version of what happened.
What's interesting about, or I guess one of the many things that's interesting about all of the JFK conspiracy theories is that they come from both the left and the right, right? It's a bipartisan affair. Why do you think that is?
Well, it started off as mostly a thing of the left. In the 60s, I think there were a lot of people who had a political axe to grind who couldn't accept that a communist had killed Kennedy, and so they were searching for meaning, and the only meaning they could find was that, Kennedy wanted to withdraw from Vietnam, Kennedy wanted to, again, the Cold War, and so Kennedy wanted to fight the mafia. They put all this meaning into it. And so they owned conspiracy theories until the last several years where all of a sudden the right has decided, deep state, we want in on this action too. And so the right got into it, and now both sides are fighting about which conspiracy theory they like the most.
Our own CBC has played a bit with this as well, right? You want to go into that?
The CBC, unfortunately, the Fifth Estate, has done 6 documentaries, maybe 7, on the JFK assassination, all conspiracy, all done by Brian McKenna, and they have put in the weirdest and strangest conspiracy theories, and it's an utter disgrace.
Brian McKenna's a pretty top-ranked journalist in this country.
Yep.
What do you think's going on?
Yeah, he got a bug. He's Irish Catholic. He got a bug about Kennedy, and somehow he convinced the Fifth Estate to go along with his theories, and he's done some really bad documentaries. It's a shame.
Have you told him so?
I have not told him, no.
Well, I think you just did.
But I've told the Fifth Estate, and I've sent them many emails, and I've sent them my book, and we'll see whether they read it.
Have you heard back?
Nothing.
You
Absolutely nothing.
Do you think there are so many different conspiracy theories, and you go into many of them in your book?
Yeah.
Do you think those who are peddling these conspiracy theories genuinely believe them?
I do.
They're not just out there to make a buck.
Well, you know, I think Mark Lane was out to make a buck in the 60s, but I think all the other ones really believe it. It's very, very tribal, you know. It feels good to be part of a group that can espouse a particular conspiracy theory. You're in on the truth. You're looking for the truth. You know the truth. You got your buddies. It's very tribal, and it's fun, and it's easy, and you don't really have to think that hard.
This really came to the fore, the whole notion of, did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone, or were there other people involved as well? It really came to the fore when Oliver Stone brought out his JFK movie.
Yes.
And let me just read a little excerpt from your book about this. I saw JFK while living in Oxford. I was infuriated by Oliver Stone's portrayal of Jim Garrison as the virtuous protagonist and Clay Shaw as the evil monster. But my friends just saw it as a great movie, and who could really argue with them? But my senses were overloaded. Exquisite sets, great acting, impressive recreations, but overall, an absolutely objectionable film from start to finish. There was one positive about the film. Kevin Bacon was delicious as a gay hustler. Fred, your colors are showing there, Fred. Okay, let's just unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, people know Oliver Stone, this director who's a very bizarre fellow but makes fantastic movies.
Yep.
Jim Garrison was who?
Jim Garrison was a district attorney of New Orleans in the 1960s, and he was the one who investigated some early leads that he was tipped off in 1963, 64. And in 1966, he was on a plane with Senator Russell Long, who told him that the Warren Report was garbage. And that sent Jim Garrison back to the volumes of evidence and to re-look at some of the early leads, because Lee Harvey Oswald lived in New Orleans for 5 months prior to the assassination.
So that was the connection, because obviously this happened in Dallas, so what's a guy in New Orleans investigating?
That was the connection.
That's the connection.
And he found two particular leads, and these leads led to two men who both happened to be gay. And unfortunately, Clay Shaw, who was this innocent gay businessman who had just retired
in New Orleans
to write plays. He restored properties in the French Quarter. He wrote plays. He was highly feted, and all his homes were featured in the magazines. And all of a sudden, he was charged with conspiracy to kill Kennedy.
Garrison destroyed him, in effect.
He destroyed him. It took 2 years for the case to go to trial. He was acquitted, and the next day, Garrison charged him with perjury. And that took another 2 years for Clay Shaw to get rid of those charges.
And if people remember the movie, I think it was Kevin Costner who played Garrison.
Yep.
And it was Tommy Lee Jones
who played
Clay Shaw.
Yep.
You know, one thing I never figured out, Kevin Costner said in Bull Durham, I think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And yet in this movie, he's insisting there's a conspiracy. Which is it, Fred? Can you get to the bottom of that for me?
He's just an actor playing a role,
there you go.
And he got a delicious part.
Yes, he sure did. Are you able to watch JFK and just treat it as the highly entertaining, although completely fictitious movie that it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched it many times, and look at the actors. I mean, Ed Asner's in there, and Jack Lemmon. I mean, Jack Lemmon's amazing.
Donald Sutherland is in
Donald
there as well?
Sutherland. I mean, it's just it's a who's who of amazing actors and actresses. So it is an amazing example of filmmaking. It's terrific that way. But
do you, as an openly gay man, though, take umbrage at the sort of, you know, this was a gay conspiracy gone wrong? Did you take umbrage at that treatment of it?
Absolutely, I was horrified. I mean, Clay Shaw was just this gentle World War II hero, and his life was trashed. And Oliver Stone decides, you know what? I'm going to make him the evil villain again. And what a horrible thing to do. I don't know why Oliver Stone could have done a variety of things to illustrate conspiracy, but he chose the worst one, and he victimized a gay man. You know, somebody should make a movie about that.
Is there anything that has transpired in the last, let's say, decade, which in your view would categorically open the door to a conspiracy theory or shut it?
I think what's really shut it is the fact that we've had millions of documents released after the film JFK. Millions of documents come out, and there's been nothing in those documents. Absolutely nothing. All the documents confirm what we know, that there was no conspiracy. So nothing has come out, despite the fact that always the theorists say, just wait, the next document's going to prove it. Well, sorry, the documents don't.
It is interesting that 55 years later, I mean, if it is a conspiracy and it is a secret that a number of people kept, this is an amazingly long period of time to keep a secret.
It's amazing, and particularly when you consider all the people who must have been involved, the people organizing it, the people covering it up, the people faking all the evidence. I mean, it's a huge list of people.
Have you been to Dallas?
Yes, I have.
Have you been to the site?
Yes.
What did you think when you saw it?
Well, I was there this past March, and I took an Uber to the Texas School Book Depository, or what was the Texas School Book Depository, and I got it and I said, "Is this Legoland? It's such a small area. You look down Elm Street, and it's just tiny. You know, the street is very, very short. It's a small street. The distances from the Texas School Book Depository for the shots are only, 55 yards and upwards. It's small, and it just takes you a few minutes to walk around."
We should say, I mean, let's just look at the Jumbotron right there. That's the Texas School Book Depository.
That's right,
From
yes.
the 6th floor, was it? That
On the
Oswald
6th floor on the right,
shots?
that's the second to the bottom, the second to the top floor on the right.
Now,
The
you
window.
actually, you can't go look out that window now,
You
right?
cannot look out the window because they've blocked it off as the sniper's nest in the 6th floor museum.
I went there on the 50th anniversary. So this is 5 years ago, it's 2013.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how eerie I felt just looking at it. I got the sense that a truly monstrous crime had happened there, and I found it all extremely
Yeah.
unsettling to be there. Doubly unsettling were all the people who were hawking JFK stuff, like pictures of his skull blown off. What did you think when you saw all of the commercial activity around that sacred ground, frankly?
I was horrified by all this commercial activity, all conspiracy-minded, very aggressive people who really will not just argue, they'll yell at you. They're very, very aggressive. I took my partner Andrew around to the picket fence to show him where they say a shot came from. And this guy accosted us saying, "Oh, David Ferry fired a shot from here."
Who's David Ferry?
David Ferry was one of the suspects in New Orleans who, of course, couldn't have fired the shot because he was in a courtroom that day in New Orleans. And when I explained it, it didn't matter. He just went on to some other topic. I went to one of the security guards who work there for the 6th floor museum. I said, all these people selling stuff? He said, well, they got to make a living. I said, yeah, but it's all conspiracy. There's nobody selling anything that's no conspiracy. He said, that would be an insult.
What would be an insult?
Selling a non-conspiracy book or magazine.
It would be an insult to sell something that was actually empirically provably true.
That's right.
It's only okay to sell crap.
That's what he thought. I was really surprised.
This is one of the things that makes this so frustrating is that this is one of those stories where you cannot change people's minds with empirically provable evidence. Why not?
It's so tribalistic that people are so bought into their theories that they will not even read a non-conspiracy book or article. It's very, very frustrating to argue with many, and I do it all the time. I argue with these people. They won't read my book. There's just no way they'll read my book. And people are proud of the fact that they've only read conspiracy books, that they haven't read any of the non-conspiracy books. And it's embarrassing to argue with them because they can't really argue the facts. It becomes very, very obvious, very shortly on the argument. But it's very frustrating. Some of these people are just so set in their ways.
When I was there 5 years ago, there is actually on the street, on the exact spot where it happened, an X, where the first shot hit John F. Kennedy in the head. Or I guess the first shot missed, the first shot that did hit him. When you were there earlier this year, is that X still there?
That X is still there, yes.
And when I was there, people actually walked out in between traffic breaks. In other words, when the light went red,
that's right,
and there was no traffic, people would run out on the spot and take selfies.
They're still doing that.
They're still doing that.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think it's just unfortunate. I think there's no respect. Do you really need to take a selfie right there? I mean, please, come on, get real. But it's sad, and it's like I say, it's become a religious icon, this site, just as some of the books of the Warren Commission have become religious books.
I wonder if part of it is because we've seen that location so much in documentaries and in the JFK movie. It looks like a movie set. It actually does, and I wonder if people don't treat it with the respect it deserves, and with the grave role it had in history, for that reason. Kind of looks unreal in a way.
You know, I think you're right, and and it's also there's just so many different types of people who sort of paying pilgrimage. It's a pilgrimage site,
Yeah.
and so people do strange things when they're on pilgrimage.
Fred, not too long ago, Gallup did a survey, and the question they asked was who killed John F. Kennedy, and the results suggest 61% of the people surveyed 55 years later that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. They think other people were involved in this. How can that number still be so high?
Well, there is a bit of good news in that, and that since 2000, the number believing in no conspiracy has risen from 11% to 30%. There actually is a little bit of progress on that front, and I think it's largely due to two factors. The internet has played a role in that people who don't believe in conspiracy can now fight back and fight back with the facts. And the second is that there's a lot of really good non-conspiracy books out there. So any new person coming into this and goes to their university library or public library will find a lot of very good non-conspiracy books.
I read a book about 25 years ago called Case Closed by Gerald Posner.
Yes.
You like that one?
I loved it. It's a terrific book. Very important. I read it too, and that really helped convince me to change my beliefs in the assassination.
Now, I remember asking you probably know him, I won't mention his name here because I don't want to get sued, but I remember asking him, he's Canadian, what do you think of Posner's book? And he said, oh, well, of course, Posner was a CIA plant for so many years, so of course he says case closed. This is one of those stories where it doesn't matter. And Posner, for those who don't know the book, he literally raised every single conspiracy theory out there and gave empirically provable evidence as to why it couldn't have been the case.
Yeah.
And that's not enough.
It's not enough. I was accused of being a CIA operative when I was 19 years old in Montreal.
And were you?
I've yet to see a check. I'm waiting. And still today, I get comments on the internet saying, "Are you a CIA agent, or are you writing this book for fame and glory? How else could you think this way?"
Which is it, Fred?
You know, it must be the fame.
Must be the fame and glory. The current president of the United States has a unfortunate habit of endorsing conspiracy theories. He's given an interview to InfoWars, which is, truly one of the more reprehensible online outfits out there. Alex Jones runs it. Do you know why these fake conspiracies just never seem to go away?
It's too much fun. You know, it's a lot of fun. In this case, unfortunately, Donald Trump was fed some or he actually got his news from the National Enquirer, which is really frightful. But stuff was fed into them, which to support a cultish figure who claims to have been Lee Harvey Oswald's mistress, who then claimed that Ted Cruz's father was involved. I mean, the whole thing was complete nonsense, completely not true. But he peddled that. Although I should also say Barack Obama peddled some nonsense when he was asked at an event, where's your progressive foreign policy? And he said, what, do you want me to end up like JFK? And so he sort of bought into some of the progressive side nonsense about JFK ending the Cold War, et cetera.
So that was an indication of his that he felt that if he did it,
he'd be
someone
killed.
would take him out.
That's right. So it unfortunately infects both sides of the political spectrum, and it's pretty dangerous stuff.
You know, at the end of the day, I always just wondered whether or not the imbalance of somebody who was as historic and, at the time, certainly Camelot and new generation taking over politics in the United States, and it was the 1960s, whether a person of that greatness could be taken out by just such an insignificant schlub as Lee Harvey Oswald. And the imbalance of that means people just can't buy it.
Absolutely. So, how could you accept that somebody like that could do it? You want to put more meaning into the assassination. We have to find meaning. How could such a great man die? It's such a lowly communist. So people have to find something bigger.
Do you think the Warren Commission did a good job getting to the bottom of it?
I think they did. I think there were some problems. They didn't have enough time. They had 10 months to do everything they had to do. They made a few mistakes, but overall they were good men who did a very good job.
I think they got very little testimony, if I recall, from Jackie Kennedy, who was, after all, the best eyewitness to the whole thing. They barely talked to her at all.
Yep.
And I'm not sure Bobby Kennedy testified either.
No, he didn't.
So that does, when you see details like that, it does open the door to conspiracy theorists who'll say, aha, you see?
Well, there was a bigger problem with the Warren Commission. They didn't have the autopsy X-rays and photographs analyzed. And if they had done that in 1963 and 64, it would have completely taken away any issues with the medical evidence in the case.
Let's just finish up on this. You've made your case known in this book.
Yep.
There are just legions on the other side.
That's right.
I know you hope that you can kind of balance things out a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're just spitting into the wind here?
I am spitting into the wind, but I think, well, I think I'm hoping that people who really don't have a huge interest in this case will read it and have a good view of the importance of objective truth. We have to, truth matters. We have to get out of our postmodernist funk right now and learn how to evaluate evidence, how to think about documents. And I'm hoping that my book will contribute to that, thinking properly about the case and thinking properly about how we should think about other aspects, other things going on in the news.
Gotcha. I was a teenage JFK conspiracy freak. That's Fred Litwin's title. He's not a teenager anymore, but he's still not big on the conspiracies. Fred, thanks a lot for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you very much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.